Look at the phone you're likely watching this on. To reach your hands, its components crossed oceans, changed ownership half a dozen times, and cleared international customs, all in a matter of days. We treat this rapid global exchange as a modern luxury, but the invisible web connecting buyers in the West to manufacturers in the East was originally spun over 2 millennia ago, straight through the harshest terrain on Earth. The Silk Road was a decentralized web of seasonal paths and maritime lanes. Merchants used this network to transport a massive inventory of spices, glassware, and paper alongside the namesake fabric. For the first time in human history, deeply isolated civilizations were wired together. A patron in Rome could purchase goods from a craftsman in Han China, completely unaware of the other's existence. This entire connection started as a localized military defense strategy. In the 2nd century BC, the Han Dynasty in China was fighting a grueling defensive war against nomadic raiders from the north and west. Emperor Wu needed allies to break the stalemate. In 138 BC, he dispatched an envoy named Zhang Chan into the unmapped, dangerous Western territories to secure military support. The envoy didn't find the alliance he was looking for, but he did discover the horses of the Dayuan people. These Western horses were significantly larger, stronger, and faster than anything bred in China. Emperor Wu immediately demanded these Western horses to upgrade his cavalry. His localized military procurement operation accidentally punched a permanent hole through the geographic wall isolating the East from the West. The popular myth of the Silk Road conjures images of a solitary explorer walking 4,000 miles from Europe to Asia. The economic reality was entirely different. Virtually no merchant ever traveled the whole route. This animated diagram shows how the system actually functioned. It was a massive bucket brigade. A single merchant would carry an item to the next town over, sell it to a new trader, and turn around. That new trader would move it to the next settlement, and the cycle repeated. Looking at the bar chart above each node, you can see the financial consequence of this relay. Every time an item changed hands, the new owner added a markup to turn a profit. By the time a product moved from the Pacific to the Mediterranean, its price had skyrocketed. The people making the real fortunes were the nomadic groups in the middle. Empires like the Kushan, operating in the harsh terrain of Central Asia, used their mobility to act as regional middlemen, facilitating these highly profitable, short-distance exchanges. The Silk Road was an economic matrix driven entirely by local traders capitalizing on extreme markups. At the far end of that matrix was silk. Spun from the cocoons of mulberry-eating worms, the technique for making this lightweight, highly durable fabric was a closely guarded Chinese state secret. When the material finally reached the Roman Empire, it triggered a cultural obsession. Wealthy Romans decked themselves out in silk as an ultimate status symbol. The Roman Senate repeatedly tried to ban the fabric, complaining that the sheer material compromised public decency. Their decrees were completely ignored by the public. The resulting consumer frenzy created a severe economic crisis.
Rome was importing staggering amounts of silk while exporting very little to China in return, draining the empire's silver and gold reserves through a heavy trade imbalance. By the 6th century, the Eastern Roman Empire was still bleeding capital. Emperor Justinian decided on an extreme, state-sponsored solution. He dispatched 2 undercover monks into China on a covert operation. Their mission was to hollow out their walking canes, steal live silkworms, and smuggle the biological assets back to Byzantium to start domestic production. Unchecked consumer demand across a global network pushed an empire to commit international industrial espionage. The constant movement of caravans created a secondary layer of exchange, the movement of ideologies and technologies. Paper and gunpowder slowly filtered westward from China. These 2 innovations would eventually rewrite the mechanics of European warfare and provide the primary canvas for all written communication. Ideologies traveled the same paths. Monasteries popped up along the trade routes to act as way stations for caravans, allowing Buddhism to migrate out of India and into China. As it passed through different cultures along the route, the religion mutated. It evolved into Mahayana Buddhism, elevating the Buddha to a divine figure and offering traders a heavenly vision of the afterlife. These exchanges provided civilizations along the route with new ways to fight, communicate, and pray. Connecting isolated populations carried a heavy cost. The infrastructure that allowed goods to flow freely provided a high-speed transit system for microscopic threats. The exact same nomadic bucket brigade that successfully transported silk, spices, and paper into Europe also transported the bubonic plague. In the 14th century, the disease tore through the trade routes and struck Europe as the Black Death, resulting in a catastrophic population collapse that killed nearly half the continent in just 4 years. The ancient world learned a harsh economic reality. The system that brings immense prosperity is the exact same system that brings lethal vulnerability. By the 15th century, the geopolitical map of the world had fractured. The Ottoman Empire conquered Byzantium, taking control of the crucial geographical choke point between East and West. The Ottomans made a decisive move. They cut off trade with the West, effectively shutting down the land routes that made up the Silk Road. Europe plunged into economic withdrawal. For centuries, the continent operated on a steady supply of luxurious foreign spices, intricate woven textiles, and new technologies. Now the supply was gone, and the demand remained higher than ever.
To survive the land blockade, European merchants and monarchs were forced to look outward, into the massive, unmapped oceans. This desperate search for a maritime bypass birthed the Age of Discovery. It pushed navigators onto the water, directly causing the European expeditions that would eventually strike the shores of the Americas. The Silk Road's greatest legacy was the permanent appetite for global connection it left behind. That demand was so powerful that when the land routes closed, it forced humanity to map the rest of the planet.